here. So this is what we're going to be drawing today. We've got a balloon animal dog. So if you look at the structure of it, you can see how it's all twisted together. So the two ears at the top here, they do not move independently. They're connected with that little twist at the top. And the same for the legs. And then you can see how it all attaches here. If you don't have a physical balloon animal to put in front of you like I do, go on Google and just grab a reference photo or take a good look at this little guy and then let's get started drawing it. So I've created a new document. It's 8.5 by 11 inches at 300 dots per inch. You can create whatever size you wish. This is just a size that I'm comfortable working with, and that's plenty big enough for any projects I'm going to do with this illustration. So first I'm going to grab a sketching pencil from the sketching section that comes with Procreate, and I like this 6B pencil, and I'm just going to use black. And we're going to draw our basic shape for our balloon animal here. What we are going to need is 10 ovals. So let's just start here by just doing the head and then like the two ears on the top. And this is just like a really rough sketch. And then the neck, the body, the two legs, and the two legs in the back, and then the tail. You'll need like a triangular kind of shape for the front and the circle for the knot. So you can see it's made out of ovals. So now that we have our basic shape, I'm just gonna like reduce that down a little bit and then draw in my ovals. And really you can draw one oval and just duplicate it and move it around to create all of these shapes. So I'm just going to go for it with my purple color here and the monoline brush that's in the calligraphy section of the app, the brush that comes with the app. I'm just going to make it real big. I think I'm going to draw one size oval for the head, neck, and body, and another size for the ears and the legs, the tail, and the back legs. So something like that. For a balloon, it's going to be maybe a little more squared off, kind of like a rounded bit. It doesn't have to be perfect because, of course, a balloon animal is like not necessarily like perfect ovals. And then just going to drop the color in like that. And then I could just duplicate that for the neck and the body. And we'll worry about getting them all arranged in the proper layer in order later, but I am going to label them to make it easier. Okay, then let's duplicate the neck and use that for the body. Something like that. The neck looks a bit long to me, so I'm going to adjust that in a minute. So something like that. And that is not the neck. Let's relabel that body. Okay, and then we need two legs. Yeah, this size looks okay for me, so I'm going to keep using the same shape for everything. So the tail. Actually, I'm going to do for the legs. So this is the front, left leg. Okay. And that'll be the back. So it's the front right leg. And we'll get these all arranged so that they make sense and there's no like white gaps like what I'm seeing right there in a moment here. And then let's just do the same thing for the back legs. A couple of these I can tell right away I'm not quite happy with them, so I'm going to work on adjusting those to get them just the way I want before I add any shading. Okay, so that's going to be his little ears. And then the tail. So you can either do an oval tail like this, or you could do something like the long, like the tip of the balloon. I kind of like that. You can even do like a ball on the end. I think I'm going to do like a skinnier tail. So I'm going to just draw that one in separately. Fill that in. And then the nose. So that is his tail. Let's label everything to keep it straight. And this will be the nose, or like the knot. And then that triangular piece for the end. And then I like to make the rim of the balloon knot. So I'm going to make a new layer over top. And just so I can see what I'm doing, I'm going to take this one down a little bit, just so I can see what I'm drawing for like the rim. So something like that. And then don't forget to turn the opacity back up on there. So that looks like something we can work with. I'm going to take out the sketch and turn it off. And then just move these shapes around a little bit until I get them exactly where I want. So I think for the neck, it's a little too big. I'm going to turn it down a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. And then I'd like to make it a little bit smaller. So you can kind of just manipulate these until it looks like something you're satisfied with. Okay, I think that I'm pretty happy with that. You also might want to draw these in a different color, like each piece in a different color, so you can kind of see what you're doing, rather than having to turn the opacity up and down to kind of see what layers you're working with and how they overlap. It might be easier to draw each layer in like an alternating color or something like that, so that you can kind of see a little easier what you're doing, what you're moving around. Okay. So I think we've got all of our layers in place. I should mention I have a real balloon animal that looks like this in front of me, so I can check it out for like the lighting and stuff. If you don't happen to have one in front of you, you can just pull it up on your browser and then put it next to your window where you're drawing, and that way you'll have a better idea. So like, let's click that one, and you can make it big so you can kind of see a little bit better what the lighting would look like, and where the shadows would be and the shines and everything like that, and also where these balloons twist together. So I'm drawing a balloon animal dog, so you can kind of see, like, here, this is a good one. See if we can make that one big. You can kind of see where the twists are and like how it's all connected when you have a real one in front of you, or at least a picture. So like these two ears are actually connected. If you can see that twist in the very top there, they're not going to be like two separate loose ears that are flopping around. They're actually connected together. And the same for the legs. So they're all going to be like kind of attached. So just something to keep in mind when you're drawing it, so you don't have like white gaps and weird stuff if you want it to look like the real thing. And you can also see from this image like how the balloons aren't exactly perfectly oval. Like, see how that's a little bit wonky, and that makes it kind of look like more realistic too. For my shadows and my shines, I'm going to switch over to an airbrush. So I'm using the one that comes with the app, but I kind of modified it a little bit. So I'm using this medium airbrush, and I modified it for my brush highlights and my shading, so I don't have to choose a different shade of purple every time trying to match it. So all you do is you swipe to the left, click duplicate, and then you're going to go in and modify the settings. So for my shader, all I did was click in here, go to rendering, and then for the blend mode, I chose color burn, and that's what I'm using for my shader. which is this, and I renamed it so I can keep track. And then for my highlighter, you duplicate it again. So swipe to the left, make a duplicate, go in and go to rendering, and for the blend mode, choose color dodge. And those are the two brushes that I'm using for all of my shines and my highlights and shading and everything. And the other thing is I adjusted it down to 50% opacity over here. So I would suggest doing that because you can always add more. And that kind of gave it like a nice soft look. And the last thing I did was I streamlined it. So if you go in, do your stroke path, you can turn this all the way up to 100 and it gives you like a nice smooth line rather than like some wiggly jittery line if your hand's not perfectly smooth. And the other thing is to keep track of them. You can rename them. So if you go to about this brush, that's how I named it, my shader, my highlighter, just so I could keep track of what I'm doing. Okay, so first I think I'll start with my shader. So you can kind of play around with this and see how big you need it to be. Oops, and the other thing, sorry, one more thing. You have to alpha lock all your layers. So you can go to each layer, click it, and tap alpha lock, or just take 2 fingers and swipe to the right for every single layer, so that your shading and your highlights only stay within your balloon shape. Okay, so we're going to work on the head here with the shader. And you'll also see as you're going, if your layers aren't in the right order, it'll be really obvious when you start adding your shadows, like how I just noticed my neck is in front of the head and I don't really want that to be in that order, so just arrange them as you need to. So I like to go in really light at first, noticing all these layers that are in the wrong order now. It's best to get them in the right order before you get going, but it's always okay. Not that hard to adjust them if you need to, once you start shading and you realize. So just like a little bit like that to start with. And then I go up here to the magic wand, the adjustments menu, and do a little Gaussian blur each time just to keep it nice and soft. It's about like 1.5% or so. You can kind of do it as much or as little as you need to, just eyeball it. And then I think I'll start the ears and just add a little bit of shading to everything first. Let's see, which ear is that? That's the back ear. So there'll be a little shadow in between these 2 ears. Whoopsies, you see how that one's in the wrong position? There we go. Okay. So something like that, since there's a seam in between those 2, and then they're twisted together right here at the top. You can't see the little twist. So that they do need to stay connected. You can't have them like flopping around like that with like all this white space, because they're not loose, they're connected. Okay, so let's do the other ear. And this one we'll just do like a little underneath, up like that, just a little bit. And maybe just like a little bit behind the head. And the head actually could be out a little further, just like a smidge. Okay, so maybe this one would also have a little bit of shading like that direction. Kind of just depends where you have your light source coming from. And so you can see how that, you can kind of see a lot of gradient there. So I'm going to go ahead and blur it out a little bit. something like that. You can always go back in and add more shadow. It does build up, and if you press it down, it gets a little darker there. Actually, it doesn't. You just layer it. Just keep going in layers. Okay. So let's work on the neck here. There it is. And that's going to have a little bit of shadow back in here where all that stuff meets. And just working stroke by stroke to get it the darkness that you want. And this is looking pretty crazy, but don't worry. We're going to blend it out and see how it looks once you blur it a little bit. We always have the undo button if we need to. Okay, so let's just see how that looks when it's blurred out a little bit. Not bad. It's a little bit purpley, a little bit dark up underneath those ears, but I can always add highlights and blur those in and stuff too. Oopsies, let's get out of there. So I think I'm going to leave that for now. I can always adjust it a little bit later too if I need to. Okay, and then let's work on the legs. And again, you're going to notice like if stuff's in the wrong order as you add these shadows. So we want that to go back there like that. So I'm just going to work through each layer and add my shadows in, and then we'll come back and talk about highlights. Okay, so that's probably as much shadow as I'm going to add for this, and then we'll go ahead and add some highlights. I think I've got everything arranged in the right order now. I found a lot as I went. So you probably will too, unless you get it all perfectly arranged, or if you draw it in like different colors from the beginning. It's a little easier to see if things are in the wrong order or whatever, but it's not that hard to move it around as you go. Okay, so what I did was I just like added a little blur each time I added a shadow, or almost every time. Just add a little blur to like blend it in, and it makes it look nice. Okay, so then we're going to do the same thing for our highlights. So we already have our highlight brush that we created. So we're going to grab that, make sure it's at 50% opacity. You can adjust the size as needed, and just start working on your highlights. And in between each highlight, you could go ahead and use the Gaussian blur to blend it a little bit, and that keeps it looking nice and soft and like a real balloon. So one thing you'll notice with the balloon is there's so many different areas that have like a little bit of shine to them. So you're not necessarily going to have like a solid shadow all across the bottom. There's like little shines and like highlights and lowlights all over the place, kind of depending also what's reflecting off your balloon. Like mine happens to be reflecting light from the window, so it has all kinds of like different highlights and stuff all over it and shapes. You can keep it like as simple as you want or add a lot of detail. It's really up to you. For mine, I'm just gonna try to do like something in between where it has a lot of different levels, but nothing like too crazy. Just enough to make it look, you know, pretty realistic. For the highlights, I kind of like to do a few strokes through, and it has like, it looks a little stripy, but that's okay because that's actually what it kind of looks like in real life, where it has a lot of lowlights mixed in there too. So I don't really mind if it has like the kind of like a little bit of those stripes through it, instead of just being like solid white and like all blended out. I think that makes it look a little bit more like the balloon that's actually right in front of me. And we'll just put a little bit back here, and then we can add some like really bright touches here and there, and that really makes it stand out. Okay, so let's go back through and add like really bright highlights here and there. So each piece is going to kind of be reflecting similar shapes. So for me, I have like something on like the head and this ear, the neck, here, here, and here. It's all going to be like kind of like the shape of a window. So those are where my main highlights are going to be, and there's kind of like a stripe here. So I'm going to kind of add things there. In the back legs, they don't really have a whole lot. So the last thing we'll do is we'll add our really bright highlights, and you can do it in each individual layer, or you can make a new layer at the top and do it with a bright white pen. But I'm just going to stick with my highlighting pen and do it in each individual layer. And you can see how when you add a new highlight or shadow and then you blur it each time, how it kind of like softens it and makes it look really nice with every time you blur it. So I think that gives it a nice, kind of like a glowy feel, and makes it look like a real balloon. And don't forget about your smudge tools. You can always use that to kind of blend things out and make them look a little softer if you have any like harsh white areas. And I think that's just about all I'm going to add here. Just kind of blend some of these out a little bit. And I think it's finished. There's our little balloon animal dog. It'd be really cute for like a birthday card or something. You can add as many highlights and keep going if you want to just add more and more detail to it. You can even add like a little texture to the plastic to make it look like those like sparkly balloons, or those pearlized balloons that look really shimmery and stuff in the light. I'm just gonna leave it like this, but this would make a really cute like birthday card or a birthday message. So if you create this, then I'd love to see yours. And if you make a different animal too, I'd like to see like all your different balloon animals. I think they look so cute. So be sure to share it with me. You can tag me on Instagram at MyMcDoodles or use hashtag MyMcDoodles so I can find it. And I can't wait to see what you come up with. I can't help myself but to try to add a little bit of that texture to it. So what I did was I duplicated this entire group by sliding to the left and pressing duplicate, and then I flattened down the group by tapping it and pressing flatten, which left me with this. So then I'll make a new layer on the top and then make it a clipping mask, and then I'll change that to multiply, and then grab this brush from the spray paints called medium nozzle, and it's the same color as what I was using before, and it's really large, so I think it says it's 75%. So then I'll just gently spray a little bit over the top, and then you can adjust the opacity as you need to so it doesn't like overwhelm your design, and then maybe about like that. And then when you zoom in, you can see how it has like a little bit of like speckly texture, which makes it look like one of those pearly balloons. So I really like that. So now I think I am finished. If you enjoyed this project, don't forget to click like. And if you would like to see more fun projects like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next tutorial. Thanks for watching.